Many of you here are not acquainted with the subject of slavery. I will therefore explain to you what it is. First, let us imagine a child to have been born of slave parents. Poor, unfortunate child. From that very day, his birthday, he is considered and classed as a brute. From that very day, he becomes property, the property of a master who may sell him and do with him what he pleases.
The reality of our historical past, particularly with regard to slavery, is a hideous legacy of one of history's most tragic events, the birth of the Africa to America transatlantic slave trade. Particularly with regard to slavery, is a hideous legacy of one of history's most tragic events. Many of us know that the colonialization and development of the Americas, North, Central, and South America, depended heavily upon the transatlantic trade in human trafficking. We also know that in every European empire in the Americas, it was enslaved Africans and indigenous Indians that produced all significant exports for centuries, have been studied by scholars the world over for decades, including the origins and demographic composition of both the indigenous Indian and African populations. The origins and beginnings of the Atlantic slave trade have been very much overlooked, and only within the past 40 years or so have details about the motivations behind the trade been revealed. A large amount of evidence concerning voyages along the Middle Passage still exists. Mostly, it is found in the form of letters, diaries, memoirs, captain's logbooks, and shipping company records. Recently, we have learned a great deal more about the transatlantic slave trade, and we know now that about 12.5 million Africans were removed from Africa, with more than 2 million of them arriving in the Spanish Americas.
The thing that distinguishes slavery in Africa from Atlantic slavery is race. Europeans set in motion a system of slavery that was predicated on the idea that certain people were marked as enslavable.
Not only did the Spanish Empire play an important role in the Americas, but the Spanish colonies have a much broader history than their British, French, Dutch, or Portuguese counterparts. The Spanish involvement in the trade was so great, it impacted all other European countries involved in the trade. It took captives from almost all African slave regions, orchestrated and transported enslaved Africans to almost all of the American colonies. Not only was it a major source of African slaves in the overseas transatlantic trade, but it also dominated in the intra-American traffic that later became a primary source of slaves. During this period, Spain was an enormous global power whose link between economics and slavery made it the most important political entity in the Americas, with political decrees within the Spanish court, assisted by religious edicts by the Catholic Church. The slave trade expanded and prospered. The kingdoms of Portugal and Spain had been posturing for possession of the African coast and colonial territories for more than a century, believing that the Catholic Church could resolve these disputes. Each sought and obtained papal bulls to support its claims. In the mid-15th century, the Pope gave the Portuguese the right to explore Africa. Later, he gave them the right to enslave anyone who was not practicing the Christian religion. This was done with the papal bull Dum Diversas in 1452. This papal bull authorized the enslavement of Muslims, pagans, and other non-Christians, while the Romanus Pontifex and the Inter Caetera laid the foundations for mercantilism and the transatlantic slave trade. The papal bull Romanus Pontifex, 1455, is an important example of the papacy's claim to spiritual lordship of the whole world, and of its role in regulating relations between Christians and non-Christians. In the long struggle between Portugal and Spain, this was an important decree because it settled the matter in favor of Portugal. Portugal's claim to lands in the New World was based on this bull. However, the bull Inter Caetera, 1493, was highly favorable to Spain. This revised bull drew a line of demarcation and assigned to Spain the exclusive right to acquire territorial possessions west of the line. But crucial to this bull was that all persons were forbidden to approach the lands west of the line without special license and consent from the royal court of Spain. The Spanish Empire was one of the first European empires to actually unify politics and religion. Spanish Jews were forced to convert to Catholicism, and those that did not convert were arrested, imprisoned, or executed. Later, an edict was declared that Moors must convert to Catholicism or be exiled. Under the rule of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, the slave trade in Spain was closely regulated and controlled. Laws existed concerning the sources of slaves, their conditions, and possible liberation. However, it was Queen Isabella who also approved the edict entitled La Encomienda, a system that started the practice of forced unpaid slavery upon indigenous peoples. Originally, the encomienda system was a method of rewarding soldiers and financial backers who fought against and helped conquer the Moors before they were exiled. This right was formally protected by the Spanish crown and permitted encomienderos to extract free labor and tribute from conquered people who were considered vassals of the crown. In turn, these soldiers and financial backers were required to ensure that natives were given instruction in the Catholic faith, the Spanish language, and protected from other warring tribes and pirates. The Spanish crown awarded these licenses as a grant to particular individuals. It was held as a monopoly on the labor of particular groups of indigenous people and was in perpetuity to the holder and his or her descendants. In many cases, natives were forced to do hard labor and subjected to extreme punishment and death if they resisted. Later, the Spanish crown reformed the encomienda laws, restricting the holding of the grant to only 2 generations instead of perpetuity. When the crown tried to implement the policy, Spanish landholders rebelled against the crown. When Charles V became the King of Spain, he inherited an enormous empire that was beset with many external as well as internal problems. The collection of both his European and American territories was enormously vast. His inheritance included the realms of Austria and Spain, the Netherlands, French Burgundy, dominions of the Holy Roman Empire from Germany to northern Italy, and the southern Italian kingdoms of Naples, Sicily, and Sardinia. Charles was born the son of Maximilian I of the Austrian House of Habsburg and Joanna of the Spanish House of Trastamare, the daughter of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain. Almost from the very beginning, Charles's reign was embroiled defending his kingdoms on the European continent and expanding his territories in the Americas. With wars being a costly endeavor, Charles was forced to borrow considerable sums of money from German and Italian bankers. In order to repay such loans, he depended heavily upon an emerging capitalist economy of cash flows from his Low Countries and the flows of precious metals from South America to Spain, which were the chief source of his wealth. Charles V received a Spanish inheritance that consisted of the union of the crowns of Castile, Queen Isabella, and Aragon, King Ferdinand. However, as a native-born Habsburg from Austria, he was viewed by Spanish aristocracy and nobles as a foreign ruler. Charles was accepted as sovereign, but the Spanish were very uneasy with his imperial style. Soon, resistance to his reign began, especially because of heavy taxation to support foreign wars, which the Castilians had very little interest in, and because he tended to select Flemings for high government offices in Castile and America, ignoring Spanish or Castilian candidates. Later, 2 rebellions. The revolt of the Germanies and the revolt of the Comuneros contested Charles's rule. The Spanish Council of State was made up of 7 Flemings and just 2 Castilians. Laurent G. Gouverneur was a Flemish aristocrat with a very high position in the Spanish court. Before 1518, the slave trade was highly regulated and consisted mostly of slaves being sent from Spain to the Americas, directly by the Spanish government. However, Charles V opened the transatlantic slave trade on a massive scale when in August 1518, he granted a charter to Laurent G. Gouverneur to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to the Spanish American colonies.
Grand Rising, Shalom Israel. I'm gonna attach this video right here in its entirety in the description box. I recently had a situation dealing with a Arab guy, Seed of Ishmael. Once again, want to reiterate for understanding. understanding the Bible has nothing to do with religion at all. It's about a God, His power, and His people. You're given two gods in this book. The original testament, which they call the Old Testament, is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the only God that creates and destroys. In the New Testament, they give you a new God, which is Jesus, and they try to tell you that it's His Son, which He is not. The Quran is nothing but the original testament brought forth by the seeds of Ishmael, who is Abraham's son, but he was the older son of Abraham, who was bypassed for the blessing, and it went to Isaac, his youngest son. Ishmael is the father of the Arabs, who they used the New Testament and doctored up and created the Quran and gave themselves their own God for being passed over. So I'm going to show you something detailed describing that, but check out these scriptures. The so-called white man on earth, is we know, is the Edomite. Ishmael is the Arabs. Ham, the Hamites, are Africans, which we are not. Africans or Shemites, seeds of Shem, of Noah's three sons. So this experience I had, it was kind of weird. Just say that this brother, this Arabic brother, thought he was going to disrespect me until I reminded him who his forefather was, Abraham, and I said that would identify you as Ishmael, right? So then I broke down these scriptures and I broke down the Quran, everything. That dude became quieter than a church mouse. That's the power of the Most High. So I'll get more in that in detail when I got more time. I want to go into this. So this is Psalms 83. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they hate that thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let's cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together, but the consent they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, so-called white people, and the Ishmaelites, so-called Arabs, and Moab, the Asians, and the Hagarenes, Gabal, Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines, and the inhabitants of Tyre. Tyre are your Africans, your Hamites. That's identifying the people that are confederate against us as long as we're going through the curses of Deuteronomy. They'll take advantage of you. And this is what I'm saying about this Ishmaelite coming at me. His form of attack, verbally, they know who we are. Probably the average peon don't, but they know that they're living a certain way off of their entitlements and their position in this kingdom. And as an inheritance, they're used to being over us or thinking they got some kind of leverage over us, whereas they can talk a certain way and disrespect us. So once I let him know this understanding, the boy Breaks came on and he got out of the way. That's the power of the Most High. So understanding this, that this is a punishment unto us, the children of Israel, this is what you'll go through as long as you stay asleep and in this world, not understanding who you are, who your God is. You know, excuse me, I got something in my eye. Okay. Understanding these scriptures and that there's only one God, one Creator, the Most High God of Israel. As I said, they split this book, or they added to this book, which is the Most High crossed every T and dotted every I. He said there was a special punishment coming to anybody adding or subtracting from this book. Hence what they're doing to this kingdom right now, poisoning everybody and everything, because they know it's a wrap for them. They know the Most High don't play. Look at what he done to us. What do you think he's gonna do to them? He didn't miss a beat on us. So let me read this, Isaiah 43. But know this, saith the Lord, that created, O Jacob, and he who formed thee, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by my name. Thou art mine. Excuse me, y'all. Thou art mine. When thou passest through the water, I will be with thee. And when thou passest through the river, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. For I am the Lord thy God, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for ransom, Ethiopia and Seba for thee. Down to 43 and 10. Ye are my witness, saith the Lord, and my servant, whom I have chosen, that they may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. I am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. I have declared, and I have saved, and I have shown. When there was no strange God among you, therefore ye are my witness, saith the Lord, that I am God. That is his name, the God of Israel. I am. That's the name he gave Moses. Ye before the day I was, I am he. And there, ye before the day was, I am he. And there is none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who shall let it? Thus saith the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. For your sake I have sent to Babylon, and have brought down all their nobles and their Chaldees, who cries are in the ships. I am the Lord, the Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. That's telling you that the Old Testament is the original Testament. It's been tampered with, but you must be able to discern and see where they're tampered at. If you know what the Most High says, and you see anything of contradictory, or you get more understanding from reading, you can see the deceptions. So that's key for discerning. Thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first, and I am the last, and besides me there is no God. That is 44 and 6. In Isaiah 45 and 4. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, mine elect. I even have called thee by my name. Have called thee by my name. I have surnamed thee. For thou hast not known me, because we've been under the conditions of Deuteronomy, the punishments. I am the Lord, and there is none else, no God beside me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun, from the west, and from the west, that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light, I create darkness, I make peace, I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Drop down ye heavens from above, and let the skies pour down righteousness. Let the earth open, and let them bring forth salvation, and let the righteous spring up together. I, the Lord, have created it. And like I said, that I'm bringing all this forward. Lost my other scripture. Where was it? That was Isaiah. That was Psalms. Oh, Deuteronomy. I want to get Deuteronomy. This is all showing you the power of the Most High God. This is letting you know that there is a God. For anyone being atheist or anything, you know, you're on a different boat. This is nothing to convert them, convince them, or anything. This is your kingdom. This is good as it gets. There's a kingdom to come. That's what we are applying for. This is what we're paying attention to. This is why this material was here, is being presented here through the power of the Most High. I'm just a vessel. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a preacher. I'm starting to see none of us are teachers. We are all vessels. And you must start to apply that if you call yourself even being in a position of being a teacher, because we all are worthy of some correction giving ourselves that title, because there's so much material out here that's worthy through a lot of these people calling themselves teacher, but there's some errors they got. So when people are collectively coming together following these so-called teachers, they're giving them too much praise, and I see a punishment coming to that. So I personally, I've never called myself a teacher. I'm never applying for that. I'm not even doing this work for that. I'm a vessel of the Most High to get this understanding to our people. Matter of fact, I'm gonna shorten this up, and I'm gonna just attach videos in the link. Pretty much all y'all know what it is, so let me get to it, man. As I share this material, like I said, I don't like to make stuff long. This, what I share, it ain't for newcomers. If you're a newcomer, you're gonna have to start at the beginning. I'm not trying to say it like that I'm not willing to reach out to people and help them, but it's pretty much in this catalog of videos that I've created through the power of the Most High. There's a lot of material in there that you can see for yourself to get a springboard to start doing some research and see things for yourself. Like I said, I'm not a teacher, so I can help you get to what you're trying to understand by the material that the Most High has provided, and I'm willing to share that. I will do this though. If anybody's new here, got some questions, I will tag in the information to show you. You got to be able to discern also as you're willing to learn. And this is another thing. For anybody that's so-called new,
Ishmael is not mentioned by name.
If you ask a question, genuinely want the answer. Because see, it's a lot of people just ask questions just to see if you don't have the answer. I'll tell you in a minute if I don't have an answer. I'm not a teacher. But from what I know, and I'm willing to share, if you got a question, I would do that. But if you don't really want the answer, if you just want to see if I'm going to stumble, hey, there's something else out there for you. Pokemon, something, you know. Entertain yourself with that. So let me get into this. This is for Ishmael.
Dr. Shabir, when I look at the story of Ishmael, I see that Ishmael is given a very prominent place in the Quran and a not so prominent place in the Bible. You know, so tell me about Ishmael, how he's viewed in the two traditions.
Yeah, in the Quran, Ishmael is not mentioned by name so often. The son of Abraham is mentioned, and Ishmael is thought to be the son that is mentioned in the story of the sacrifice. Elsewhere, he is mentioned by name. For example, in the 19th chapter of the Quran, where God shows that he was a righteous person, and God gave him prayer and charity, and he commanded his progeny to do the same. In the Bible, the stories are told more extensively about all of the prophets, and the Quran only needs to refer to those stories allusively to bring out the lessons that could be brought out from these stories following the Quranic line of thought. But even in the Bible, the story of Ishmael, compared with others around him, seems to be diminished, especially in comparison with his brother Isaac. which is a curious phenomenon, because Ishmael was the firstborn son of Abraham, according to the biblical narrative itself. And so you would expect him to have a greater prominence, but he doesn't. The prominence shifts to Isaac, who comes to be known as the ancestor of the Israelite nation. And Ishmael, by comparison, is said to be a great person, and that he will have many descendants. But he will also be a wild donkey of a man whose hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him.
And in contrast, in the Quran, Ishmael in the Islamic tradition is seen as sort of the ancestor, right? The ancestor of the Prophet Muhammad and the Muslims, and the Arabs.
So in Islamic tradition, Ishmael gets a large mention.
Yes.
And Isaac not so much mentioned. So as if the Islamic tradition in a way counterbalances and fits nicely in with the Judeo-Christian tradition, showing the prominence that both sons should have.
Now, it seems as if Ishmael's story within the Quran begins with Abraham leaving them in some sort of barren land, which appears to be Mecca. Right?
Yes, in the 14th chapter of the Quran, Abraham prays and says, God, I have settled my descendants in a land that is not cultivated, so please you provide for them, and cause the hearts of people to be inclined towards them. But he says he's leaving them there for a purpose, so that they would worship God. It's as if there is an attempt here to plant a new place of worship. I'm using a terminology here from Christian thinking, in that somebody may say, I'm planting a new church. They go to a new area where there's no church, and then by their very presence there, they're going to establish a Christian community.
So that's what Abraham wanted to do.
A church, yes. So Abraham was planting his descendants in a barren region where people would not have come otherwise, so that in that area God can be worshipped as well.
How does that story appear in the Bible?
In the Bible, it takes on a different coloring, in that the story goes that Ishmael was born first, and when he was about 13 years old, Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to Isaac. So Isaac was the second son. When Isaac was being weaned, probably he was about 2 years old, Ishmael was laughing at him or playing with him. The term Yetzchak in Hebrew is ambiguous. It could mean either way. If it's taken to be mocking him, then this is more likely to explain Sarah's behavior, because Sarah then says, drive out this slave woman and her son. I won't allow her son to inherit along with my son. And it's in response to this that Abraham then takes his wife and Hagar and her son and leaves them in the barren area. And in fact, it is said that God told Abraham, listen to your wife, which in a way it's a good commandment, listen to your wife. But in this specific circumstance, one struggles to see the morality of it. Like, how would it be right to leave this woman and her child with only a small supply of water, which eventually will run out?
So do you sense some kind of bitterness? You can see that the children of Israel are favored. And this was key for understanding, discerning what has transpired on this earth through the power of God that creates all and destroys all. He passes judgment. He chooses favorites. And this is what we're dealing with as a people. We as his chosen are going through the curses of Deuteronomy. You got these bitter nations of people, which means nationalities in the scriptures. When you see nations, it means nationalities. The Edomites are bitter, being the seed of Esau. The Spaniards are Edomites. The Pope speaks Spanish. He's an Edomite. Those are the ones who colonialized the indigenous people. This is why they speak Latin. That's why they converted to Catholicism. This is their religion. All religions are man-made, which were created by these bitter nations of people. They took the Torah, the original testament, our records when we went into captivity under the curses of Deuteronomy, and created their own gods. Esau created the New Testament, which gives you Jesus as their new God. Ishmael created the Quran and gives you Allah. And our people are ignorantly following all these forms of religion being lost. So, nevertheless, if you can't see for yourself as somebody, a newcomer, all things are adding up. You can keep doubting and keep asking questions and not really wanting answers. Your pathway, your destination is already written in stone. So, you have no business here. And for the Ishmaelites, like I said, for that one particular one, he's probably on here because I shared some videos with him. We had phone numbers to exchange. That's how a lot of this transpired. So I had no problem putting his training wheels on and tuning that little boy up and let him know exactly what's what. Stay in your lane. These damn heathens gonna learn and respect the children of Israel. There's a kingdom to come. All praise to the Most High, the God of Israel, the only God that creates and destroys. Shalom.